The news didn't just break, it detonated. Phones across Detroit buzzed with alerts. ESPN's screen turned blood red with banners, and fans scrolling through Twitter stopped cold at the headline they never expected to see. Blockbuster. Lions hand Jameson Williams a 5-year, $115 million extension. For a moment, the city froze. Then it erupted. Some fans screamed in joy, others cursed under their breath. And across the NFL world, analysts stumbled over their words as they tried to process what the Lions had just done. Jameson Williams, the kid who once limped into Detroit with questions swirling about whether his torn ACL had robbed him of his future. The kid who served a suspension that had fans muttering if he'd ever be worth the draft capital. The kid who, for 2 long years, was more promise than production. And now, he was the face of the franchise. The gamble wasn't just big, it was historic. Inside bars along Woodward Avenue, fans slammed their beers down on tables as reactions split the room in half. One side shouted, "Finally, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are building a dynasty." The other shook their heads, muttering, "We just paid Tyreek Hill money for a guy with one good stretch. This could bury us." Even in homes filled with Honolulu blue and silver decor, families argued at dinner tables. A father pulled his son closer, pointing at the TV as highlights of Williams' burning defenders played in slow motion. "That speed," he whispered. "That speed is why we did it." But the son, wearing a Hutchinson jersey, shook his head. "We should have paid the defense first. What happens when contracts for St. Brown and Hutch come due? We can't pay." Everyone. The debate wasn't just in Detroit. It was everywhere. ESPN went live with Stephen A. Smith nearly falling out of his chair. "Oh my goodness gracious, the Detroit Lions just handed this kid $115 million. Don't get me wrong, he's talented, but one big play doesn't make a career. This is risky business, ladies and gentlemen." Skip Bayless, smirking as always, jumped in with venom. Classic Lions move. They win a few games, feel good about themselves, and then throw money at a flash in the pan. This deal will backfire. But then Shannon Sharpe countered, pounding the desk with passion. "Stop it, Skip. Did you watch Jameson last year? This kid has world-class speed. He's the kind of weapon that changes coverages before the ball is even snapped. Pay him now, before the market doubles." Detroit is playing chess while the rest of the league is playing checkers. That was the firestorm. The world couldn't decide whether Detroit had just pulled off genius or just set their franchise ablaze. To understand the stakes, you had to rewind. Jameson Williams wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be a risk. A first-round pick with a blown-out knee, taken by a franchise that had always been mocked for same old Lions mistakes. His rookie year? A ghost. His sophomore season? Interrupted by a gambling suspension that had fans calling him reckless and critics labeling him a bust. But when he returned, something changed. His routes sharpened. His confidence glowed. And his speed, his speed, reminded the league of why he had been drafted in the first place. Week after week, he turned defenders into silhouettes in the background of highlight reels. By the end of the season, he wasn't just a role player. He was the nightmare every defensive coordinator circled in red ink. And now, after just one breakout year, the Lions had decided to bet the house, aka the star in Allen Park. The mood was electric. Teammates mobbed him after practice, clapping him on the back, teasing him about buying the O-line stakes for life. Jared Goff, the quarterback whose career resurrection had been tied directly to Williams' emergence, smiled when asked. "He earned it," Goff said. "Every big play he made last year was a spark we needed. He changes this team." Amon-Ra St. Brown, the quiet assassin of the receiving corps, smirked and added, "Speed kills." Jameson's proof. But beneath the smiles, whispers spread. Young players wondering what the massive deal meant for their futures. Veterans asking if this contract would tilt the balance of the locker room. Because money this big isn't just money, it's hierarchy. Outside Detroit, rivals smelled blood. Packers fans laughed online, mocking, "Enjoy cap hell, Detroit. We'll own this division again in 2 years." Bears supporters piled on, tweeting, "Same old Lions, overpaying." For hope. Even Vikings fans, who rarely had reason to talk trash, posted memes of Williams tripping over dollar bills. But privately, rivals weren't laughing. One NFC North assistant coach admitted to a reporter, "With Jameson locked in, their offense, is terrifying. You can't leave him in single coverage. You can't press him without safety help. He makes everyone else's job easier. Still, the pressure was undeniable. 90 million? 115 million? Whatever the exact number turned out to be after incentives, it was massive. The kind of deal that either elevates a franchise or haunts it for decades. And then came the twist that turned excitement into suspicion. Within hours of the announcement, insiders leaked a bombshell. The Lions hadn't just extended Williams. They had rushed it. Rival teams, unnamed, but whispered to be the Chiefs and Eagles, had quietly reached out to Williams' agent, floating the idea of blockbuster trades if Detroit hesitated. They panicked, one anonymous GM said. They thought if they didn't lock him now, he'd test the waters. They overpaid to shut the door. Fans read the leaks and exploded all over. Again, on Twitter, hashtags trended within minutes. Hashtag payday paranoia, hashtag smart move or mistake, hashtag Lions all in call-in shows lit up with voices shaking in rage or trembling with joy. We had to do this, one caller shouted. Jameson is our Tyreek. He's the weapon we've been waiting for since Calvin left. Another caller snapped back. This was panic money. They rushed it because they were scared of losing him. And when we're broke in 3 years, don't say, I didn't warn you. As the sun set over Ford Field, Detroit was no longer just celebrating or mourning. It was bracing for the weight of expectations, for the scrutiny of every drop, every catch, every step Jameson Williams took from now on. Because when you're paid like a superstar, you don't get judged like a prospect. You get judged like a savior or a fraud. And in that tension, between hope and fear, between triumph and disaster, Detroit found itself staring at the cliffhanger of a lifetime. Did the Lions just crown the next face of their franchise, the man who would finally deliver a Lombardi to the Motor City? Or had they written the first line of yet another heartbreak saga? The chapter closed not with clarity, but with chaos. Williams smiled for cameras, shaking hands with the GM, his signature inked on paper worth more than most could dream. Fans screamed, critics sneered, teammates rallied, rivals mocked. But as the lights dimmed on a historic day, one truth remained. This wasn't just a contract. It was a gamble with the very soul of Detroit football, and everyone, fans, rivals, players, media, knew the same thing. The real story wouldn't be told in press conferences or tweets. It would be told under the lights, on Sundays, when Jameson Williams lined up, the world watching, with $115 million worth of pressure strapped to his chest. The morning after Jameson Williams inked his $115 million extension, Detroit was a city divided. Billboards lit up downtown with his smiling face in Honolulu blue, but in coffee shops and union halls, the debate raged like wildfire. Some fans wore his jersey with pride, calling it the dawn of a dynasty. Others muttered darkly that the front office had lost its mind, tying a historic sum to a player who had flashed brilliance but still carried the ghosts of suspension and injury. Sports talk radio was relentless. Callers screamed over each other, voices cracking with both joy and rage. This is the best move in decades. Finally, Detroit kept its own superstar instead of letting him walk, shouted one fan. Another snapped back. Superstar? He's had one good stretch. You don't crown a king for winning a single battle. This is $115 million of hope, not proof. And while the city roared with divided voices, the national media sharpened its knives that ESPN plastered his face with. The headline, $115 million gamble. Skip Bayless sneered into the camera. This is pure desperation. Detroit had one playoff run, and suddenly they think Jameson is Randy Moss. Please. Shannon Sharp leaned forward, shaking his head. Skip, you sound crazy. Did you see the way this man torched defenses down the stretch? He's not hype. He's real. And Detroit finally showed the guts to bet on themselves. About time. The debate wasn't just about Jameson. It was about what he represented. For years, Detroit had been the NFL's punching bag, mocked for futility, known for squandering legends. Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, names etched in gold, but without rings. Now, with Jameson, they were trying to flip the script to tell the league they weren't just surviving. They were building. But with big money comes big shadows. Inside the locker room, the ripple effects were immediate. Teammates congratulated Jameson, clapped his shoulder, teased him about buying dinner for the next 5 years. But beneath the laughter was unease. Amon-Ra St. Brown, the fiery receiver who had carried Detroit through lean times, was quietly nearing his own payday. Jared Goff, rejuvenated under Dan Campbell's system, eyed the cap space and wondered if his extension would now be squeezed. Even rookies whispered to each other, "If Jameson's the golden boy, what's left for us?" Dan Campbell sensed it. He gathered his team, stood at the center of the locker room, his booming voice filling the silence. "Listen up. Jameson earned this. He bled for this team. Don't ever think this is about taking from you. It's about adding to us. You want your bag? Go earn it. But don't forget, nobody eats if we don't win." The speech landed. Loud applause, slaps on helmets, renewed focus. But the unspoken tension lingered. Jameson's deal wasn't just money. It was a mirror, and every player saw their reflection in it. Meanwhile, rivals smelled blood. In Green Bay, fans jeered online. Classic Lions move, overpay, and choke later. In Chicago, sports radio laughed. They paid $115 million for a track star with no rings. We'll expose him by week 3. Even in Minnesota, bitter rivals muttered, "We had Calvin Johnson in this division once. Know how many titles he brought? 0. Good luck repeating history." But then came the real twist. Reports began leaking that Jameson's deal wasn't born purely of faith. Insiders whispered that the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles had quietly contacted Detroit about a potential blockbuster trade for Jameson weeks before the extension. Both teams had tested the waters, dangling draft picks and veterans, betting the Lions might hesitate on a long-term gamble. Detroit panicked. Rather than risk losing their breakout weapon to a Super Bowl contender, they locked him in fast, maybe too fast. The revelation hit Detroit like a second earthquake. Suddenly, the extension wasn't just loyalty. It was survival. And fans began asking the chilling question, did the Lions extend Jameson because they believed in him, or because they were terrified of seeing him torch them in another jersey? The national media feasted. Colin Cowherd smirked on air. So that's the truth. Detroit wasn't bold. They were scared. They didn't want Jameson to become Mahomes' new weapon. They didn't want Philly stealing another star. This wasn't about faith. It was about fear. Detroit fans erupted in fury online. Doesn't matter. He's ours. This was desperation, not strategy. Same old Lions, hiding panic behind a paycheck. As week 1 neared, the narrative reached fever pitch. Jameson was no longer just a wide receiver. He was the $115 million question mark hanging over the franchise. Every snap would be judged. Every drop, every touchdown, every post-game quote would fuel either the believers or the doubters. And then, under the primetime lights of Ford Field, the test arrived. The Lions opened against the Dallas Cowboys, a clash dripping with narrative. Parsons in green, Bland crowned as Dallas' new defensive star, and Jameson standing at the center of Detroit's gamble. The stadium shook as the game began. Jameson lined up wide, shoulders loose, eyes sharp. The first play? A quick slant. He caught it, burst forward, broke a tackle, and turned 6 yards into 20. The crowd exploded. Chants of Jameson, Jameson, echoed through the rafters, but Dallas adjusted. Bland shadowed him, pressuring, bumping, suffocating routes. By halftime, Jameson had only 3 catches. Twitter lit up. $115 million for this. Bust in real time. And then came the fourth quarter, tie game, under 2 minutes left. Ford Field was deafening. Goff dropped back, pressure collapsing, eyes scanning desperately. Jameson locked. One-on-one with Bland, exploded off the line, cut inside, and streaked down the seam. Goff fired. The ball sailed high, defenders closing, until Jameson leapt, arms outstretched, fingertips brushing leather. He snagged it, landed, spun, and sprinted. 50 yards. Touchdown. Ford Field erupted like an earthquake. The cameras caught him pounding his chest, roaring into the night, teammates mobbing him. And in that instant, the doubts quieted. The whispers paused. The city believed again. The next morning, headlines blazed. $115 million justified in one play. Jameson Williams silences doubters. Detroit's gamble pays, for now. But beneath the euphoria, the cliffhanger remained. Could he do it again? Could he carry this weight for an entire season, for years, under the crushing pressure of $115 million? Or was this just one glorious moment before reality returned? As the season marched forward, Detroit knew one truth. Their future was no longer defined by history, by failure, by same old Lions. It was defined by one man, one gamble, one story still being written. Jameson Williams had the money. He had the spotlight. He had the city in his hands. But in the NFL, one play, one game, one season never tells the whole story. And so the chapter closed with suspense as Detroit stood on the edge of destiny, whispering one question into the roaring night. Had they just witnessed the birth of a dynasty or the opening scene of heartbreak?